Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is happy to welcome back Sammy Sutton. Looking several shades darker than when he left us. Chazak Baruch. Hashem should bless your tan to last a very long time. Okay. Breakfast in the Class is also dedicated in celebration of the birth of David Kochavi Lowe by his grandparents, Lisa and Nathan Lowe and Bina and Steve Daba. We are now in the summer schedule where breakfast in the class is not every day. So we didn't do it Friday. We haven't done it since then. So a couple of dedications are piled up from behind us. So we're going to go and mention those dedications now. The Brit Milah was very, very beautiful. Mazal Tov to all involved, and especially want to make note of how beautifully the Avi HaBen spoke about the name David and Kochavi on the day of the Brit Milah. Also sponsored today by Shelley and Alberto Senedo in honor and in memory of her mother, Mago Bat Meri, Alea Shalom, Ruach Adonai, Tenichena Began Eden. Breakfast in the class dedicated to Leilu Nishmat Yisrael Sando David Ben Simon, Alav Shalom, who made a huge impact on the lives of hundreds of students in the old city by Eliana, Rivka, and Orly. Also sponsored by Stephen Rapport in honor of Eliyahu Levi. We have witnessed him grow over the past few years into a talented, world-class Hazan. Chazak Baruch. He has his father to look up to and learn from, and he is becoming an amazing Chazan in his own right. Of course, dedicated to the Refuah Shlema of Chana Bat Simcha Fega and Eliyahu Shimon Ben Mazal Fortuné, and dedicated loving memory of his little Sefer Leah Bat Chana, and as well, dedicated loving memory of Nishmat Nuriel Sion Ben David HaLevi. Condolences from the Lavi family from his grandson Robert Lavi. Finally, the week of Kobru is sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. One last thing I need to say: somehow no one seems to understand what the word cold brew means. Again and again, I get stopped at weddings, at bar mitzvahs. People want to know, Rabbi, what's cold brew? I'm explaining for the last time, hopefully. Cold brew is a cold process wherein you brew the coffee differently than hot coffee. It's cold brewed coffee. So that's what cold brew is. Hopefully, everyone will now know. Rabotai, please share, tell your friends. That's what it means. Hopefully we've cleared up the confusion. Okay, let's begin, Rabotai. I want to share one idea that I think is a very powerful yesod, a very powerful concept. The story of Korach is one which I think gives us pause. It talks about a person who was very wealthy, a person who was very wise, a person who had tremendous impact on the people. I always point this out whenever we read Parshat Korach. The pasuk tells us something remarkable. It says that in the gathering of Korach, everyone gathered together to see the showdown between Korach and Moshe. Understand that the influence of Korach was such that he was able to single-handedly get the entire Jewish people to an event. You know, getting Jews somewhere is a big deal. Getting all the Jews to go to the same place, I don't pray there, they're not like that, the other tribe, they're this, they're that, Sephardic, Ashkenaz, Hasidish. He gathers the entire Edah. This is a man of extraordinary gifts. And somehow, he's not satisfied. And Moshe tells him, Rav Lachem, it's enough, Bnei Levi, what you were given. Ubikashtem gam kiuna, you also want something else. It's not enough what you have. Korach fights to the bitter end. And to me, I see something very, very special in the end of the story. The gauntlet is thrown down. Korach is not backing down. The mutiny is afoot. And Moshe says, okay, you think you should be the Kohen Gadol? No problem. So why don't you and everyone who thinks like you gather yourself pans, bring the Ketoret, and whoever God chooses, that will be the person that will be known to be the one that was chosen by God. everyone else who fails, you'll know what comes your way, because messing around with the Ketoret has deadly consequences. And what are the deadly consequences that we read about? We already saw the story of Nadav and Avihu, where they died because they brought Esh Zara. Interesting, by the way, what this idea was. Why Moshe Rabbeinu told him to bring this korban. But Moshe Rabbeinu says, you want the job? You think you deserve the job more than Aharon? Okay, let's see. Let's see if God chose him or if I chose him. If I made this up for myself. Astoundingly, Korach goes through with it. The 250 members of Reuven that serve as leaders of the Jewish people, they go through with it. And they die immediately in that story by bringing korban. They're burned as well. And then the earth opens. And anyone who did not bring the korban, but was associated with this machloket, starts getting swallowed up. Now, my friends, at this point, if the Korach and his followers have been either swallowed up by the earth, or burnt by the story of the what's it called, of the Ketoret, or in the final plague that takes place after the story of the Korach, people start dying. Who saves the Jews from being swept away in this plague? Says the Torah that Moshe tells Aharon to go stand between the ones that are living and the ones that died already. As the plague is sweeping through the nation, Aharon comes holding the Ketoret, the same Ketoret that the other people brought and they were punished for because they were not genuine. Aharon comes now, right? And he brings the Ketoret and the plague stops. And everyone to the right of Aharon survives and everyone on his left has passed away. It's wild. It's wild to read this. You'd think that at this moment, the rebellion is quelled. And yet, says the Torah, no. Have every member of every tribe take a staff, take your regular wooden walking stick, bring it here into the Beit HaMikdash, stick it into the Beit HaMikdash, and let's see what happens. The next morning, all of the staffs, nothing on them, with one exception. Aharon's staff, miraculously, a regular walking stick, sprouted buds and grew almonds. Hashkedia porachat. Right? Isn't that crazy? Now, my question here is, have you not seen enough? The pans, the earth, the plague. Is it still not enough? Do they still need to prove themselves? So what is the reasoning? What's the depth behind this concept of the Gemilat Shkedim on the staff of Aharon? So there are many, many answers to this question. And I'd like to just touch on one of the answers to this question that made an impact on me. Right in the beginning of time, we read a very terrible story of Cain and Hevel. Cain brings a korban. Hevel sees that Cain brought a korban, and he imitates him, and he also brings a korban. But he brings a much better korban. Whereas Cain's korban lacked in its beauty, it was not done perhaps with the fullness and the generosity that it could have been done with. And Hevel, he brought the fattest of his animals, and Korach brought something cheap. So God took the korban of Hevel. Cain is furious, he's jealous, he fights with his brother, and ultimately he kills him. My friends, in the aftermath of that act, that first act of fratricide, the first act of murder that took place in our world, God appears to Cain And he says to Cain, Impetative se'et. If you improve your way, you'll elevate yourself. You did something wrong. You made a mistake. But now is the time to be able to try and do something right. To try and improve your way. The Chachamim say he didn't actually even know how to kill him. He didn't know. No one had ever murdered anyone ever before. What do you do? How do you kill someone? That's why it says the bloods of your brother are calling out to me, plural. Because he was hitting him in every ever until finally he figured out how to kill his brother. Cain at that moment thinks that there's no chance for him. And God says, Tetiv se'et, you have a chance over here to be able to turn things around, to do things in a better way. From that moment we learned that in this world there is an idea of teshuvah. But what God says to Cain is so profound. You're not going to get teshuvah just by sitting there and feeling bad. You're not going to get teshuvah just by sitting there and burying yourself in the dark feelings of guilt of the mistake that you made. There needs to be some forward motion. The Pasuk tells us that there are two steps in this process of self-betterment. One of them is the process of sur merah, of turning away from evil. Turning from evil, sur merah. And the other process is va'aseh tov. A person cannot spend their life just conquering evil impulses. You have to also put some in the positive column. In fact, there are times when the only thing that will get you out is putting things in the positive column. Normally, what do we say? First you should do sur merah. First you should get yourself out of the bad ways that you have. Heal all of your negative tendencies. And once you're pure, now do mitzvot. That's the ideal scenario. But we learned that there are times when that just doesn't work. Where do we find this example? In the story of Mitzrayim. The Jewish people had descended to such a low level. They were so full of tum'ah. They were the 49th level of tum'ah. It was a disaster. And at that point, they had no mitzvot. Now you'd think that what should God give the Jews? Which mitzvah should God give the Jews that had engaged in the depravities of Egypt, that had become corrupted in their way to be like the Egyptians to the point where they had no mitzvot? You would think that the mitzvah should be one of self-purification. Work on this midah, work on that problem, fix up this issue. And yet, we learn the exact opposite. On the night of the Seder, what do? What's the first of the things that we do at the Seder? Kadesh Urchatz. Now, normally, what should come first? Purifying, rechatz, washing your hands, or Kadesh, or making Kiddush, elevating or sanctifying. In the Beit HaMikdash, what do you do first? Do you do the work in the temple and then wash? Or do you wash your hands and your feet if you're a Kohen, purify yourself, and then come to do the holy work? It should really be rechatz and then kadesh. But my friends, sometimes a person is so deep in the challenges, he's become a person who's dishonest. He's a person who's controlled by his desires. He's a person who cannot conquer his anger, his angry demeanor. He loses his temper. He doesn't have patience. He's judgmental. Rabbi, I can't. That's just how I am. A person like that sometimes, if he waits to build until he's planted a proper foundation, he'll never build anything at all. So therefore God said to the people in Egypt, Kadesh Urchatz. For you, Aseh Tov comes before Sur Merah. Kadesh Urchatz. God says to Cain is so humiliated. He's so upset. He can't believe how bad this is. He says, where will I go? What hope is there for me? God says to him, Im tetiv se'et. Focus on doing a little bit of good every day. You can't fix all the problems in your past. You're not ready yet. You can't face that monster? Okay. Try and do something good today. And that se'et, that will lift you. And once you're lifted and you're no longer in this deep dark hole, you no longer feel these feelings of guilt, of self-deprecation. My friends, at that point, you can build something beautiful. There are three things that the people learned in the story of Korach. One of them was the death that happened through the bringing of the Ketoret. The second is the death that happened with the opening of the earth and the swallowing of Korach and his rebellious, mutinous crew. And finally, the plague that breaks out. But my friends, it's like going to the playing the slots and you get 777. This is like crossbones, skull and crossbones, death, death, death. My friends, there are some people that don't change because of negative things. They don't respond to negative messages. Threats don't work. Consequences don't work. Showing the person you're upset doesn't work. Anger doesn't work. The only thing that works is flowers. The only thing that works is showing the person that, you know what? We don't have to deal with all of that just yet. Let's just try and build something. Let's just try and make something out of what we've got. The fourth sign was a sign that was for the Jew that does not respond to negative, to punishment, but only responds to positive encouragement. So here we made a sign that was just so beautiful. My friends, I think all of us have to learn this lesson. Oftentimes, a person is incapable of being able to respond to negativity. You have parents, they see a child, the child's not doing well in school, and that's it, you're grounded. And then they take away this, they take away that. And what happens to some kids? Some kids understand there's consequences to my actions. I want my phone, I want my this. I'm going to respond, I'm going to turn the thing around. You have a husband and a wife, they punish each other by withholding love because one of them upset the other. So you punish. You don't call it a punishment because they're not a child, but oh boy, you're punishing them. You're ignoring them. You're not doing nice things for them. The environment you're creating in the house, you're making this toxic environment. You're not talking, you're having that face on. You're snapping at them, answering short answers, punishing them. There are some people that don't respond to punishment. There are some people who don't respond to negativity. They respond to flowers. So Borei Olam, after obliterating the competition, still says, you know what? Take your staff, stick it in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and watch. What grows from that staff? That Vayifrach, and what happens? Ve'igmol shkedim. The root of the word shkedim is the word shakad. Shoked means to try to do something. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and sometimes us, the challenge is in, after having lesson after lesson after lesson, we give up. But actually, if we are shoked, if we're dedicated to getting the job done, then we'll figure out a way to bring the person round. And that's what God does in this moment. By finding yet another Siman, a Siman that got to the hearts of those who punishment only made their hearts harder. I don't know what to do with this kid. I've tried everything. Have you? Or have you only tried negative? You've tried everything negative. Have you tried something that doesn't look like that? And my friends, the Siman is amazing. The stick that they stuck in the Bet HaMikdash, it is symbolic. This shevet that they stuck in there, the word shevet in the Torah, it means, right, a stick, but it's used specifically in the Pesukim to describe a person who is punished with yisurin, with difficulties. Chosech shifto soneh beno. If a father holds back the staff, spare the rod, right? Hate the child. That's the famous line goes. But the word over there, shevet, what does it mean? It means a stick that someone's getting hit by. So Borei Olam says, we've hit enough. Put the shkedim, put the staff away, stick it in the bet Hamikdash, in the Mishkan. Maybe without the punishment. Instead, for those people, we'll now have another way of being able to get this across the finish line. I want to share with you one such example, and with that will end. Rabbi Eliezer Gordon was collecting money for his yeshiva. And they needed a tremendous sum of money, and he traveled to the big city to be able to have this meeting with a great gevir, a great wealthy person, to ask him for money to help build the yeshiva, help the community, help everyone grow. Anyway, the man, of course, he takes the meeting, one of the great tzaddikim of the day, sits down, Rabbi, how can I help you? He says, sir, I need to ask you for a tremendous favor. The yeshiva, we need to count on you for 500 rubles. 500 rubles was a huge sum. A huge sum. But the yeshiva had many needs, and the fellow was very wealthy. The man says to the rabbi, Higzamta, 500, it's a lot. Where do you get off coming to ask me for 500? Where's the logic that you think you're going to walk in here and ask me for this huge sum of money? You know, where are you coming from? And the rabbi says, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the mitzvah of ma'asar behema, the giving of the 10th animal that to charity, to the Kohen, for their sustenance, for the community, for the Kohanim that didn't have properties. They survived off of the tzedakah of Am Yisrael. He says, what does ma'asar behema, giving the 10th animal, what does that have to do with anything? The rabbi says, listen, when they would give ma'asar behema, you know how they would do it? A person would take a stick, and they would dip the stick in paint, and they would stand by the gate, and they would count as the animals came through the gate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th one, you touch the animal. Now the animal has got blue paint. Now you know that one's a maaser. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 maaser. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 maaser. The guy says, okay, what does that have to do with anything? The rabbi says, listen, you know, there are many wealthy people, they don't have 100 animals, they don't have 1,000 animals, they have 100,000 animals. You have a person who has 120,000 animals in the Gemara. You know how long it takes for this great wealthy rabbi to sit there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Botach. Maaser. You know you have 120,000. Just count out 12,000. Chalas. What are we wasting this rich man's time? The rich man, who feels the same way about people wasting his time, he says, absolutely, Rabbi. It's a great question. Why are rabbis wasting his time for? Let him count out 12,000 animals. Chalas. He has to count out all 120,000. Rabbi Gordon smiles at him and he says, because when you ask the Ashir, the rich man, for the 12,000 animals, he goes crazy. 12,000 animals I have to give away? So you know what we did? We made him sit down and count. 1 for me, 2 me, 3 me, 4 me, 5 me, 6 me, 7 me, 8 me, 9 me, 10 somebody else. When he counts and recognizes how much he gets, how much he has, then it becomes much easier to be able to be kind and generous with his maaser, with his behemah. So we needed to give the Ashir this job in order to get him to be able to do maaser. Okay? So he says to this rich man, he says, I've asked you for 500 rubles, but the factory that you have in town, that's yours. The apartments that you own on the beach that you're renting out, those are yours. The farms that you have on the outskirts of the city, producing all sorts of, those are yours. The flocks of animals and whatever in the field, those are yours. The skyscraper, yours. The house, yours. The rolls, yours. All yours, 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 yours. I need 500 rubles. The man smiles and he writes a check. My friends, sometimes you look at a guy like that and you say to him, 500 rubles? You're complaining? You're kvetching? You're worth $2 billion. What's 500 rubles for you? That's toilet paper. But some people, that's not what they respond to. They don't respond to the castigation. They don't respond to the put down. What did they need? They needed someone to say, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this. And then all of a sudden his heart becomes ready to flower, ready to give. Hashem should bless us always to be people that help other people grow, help other people flower, recognize when the right time is to come with consequences, and when the right time is to take a stick that no one believed would ever be able to grow into something other than what it is, and to see it flower and grow beautifully and surprise us all. Baruch Adonai Leolam.